Hi, I'm Brian Levant, the writer and producer of ancient TV series like Happy Days, Mork and Mindy, and my long-running Leave It to Beaver revival. I'm also a film director whose credits include the original Beethoven, the Flintstone movies produced by Steven Spielberg, Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger, The Spy Next Door with Jackie Chan, and a pair of wonderful live-action CGI Scooby-Doo films that were made for the Cartoon Network. I'm also a college professor teaching at the University of Arizona and the University of New Mexico. And finally, after 11 years, the proud author of My Life in Toys, which chronicles both my career and my collecting habit. I'm so proud of this book that I did with my brother-in-law, Joe Pellegrini, who's one of the top tabletop photographers in the country. We spent 11 years photographing and writing this super-sized coffee table book the size of a coffee table, but within it over 1,100 original color photographs spanning so many of my interests. In My Life in Toys, I tried to chronicle the expansive world of my collecting, which is so integrated with my career that one could never imagine when I was watching the premiere of Happy Days in January 1974 that I would end up spending over 8 years on and off with the series, and that I would collect an impressive collection of Fonzie motorcycles, action figures, now Funko Pops, color forms, games, an unbelievable amount of merchandising from that show as there was from so many of my other projects. For instance, the Flinstones, you can see the pervasive influence that it's had on my collecting and my career. But you could have never imagined being 8 years old watching the premiere of the Flintstones that one day you would take the creative helm under the supervision of one of the finest filmmakers who's ever walked the earth and have an opportunity to make a holiday tentpole extravaganza of Hanna-Barbera's crown jewel. I collect so many things. My interest originated in childhood, so many things that were developed long after. I collect things because I love them. I am not a classic collector. I don't collect particularly for condition in the box. I display things very openly and in large groups, and that way you become much more aware of the color and the combinations and the uniqueness of the items and the multiplicity of them. And for instance, in the Flintstones, before style guides became very prevalent, most of the toys were designed and made overseas. And in many places like Japan, they did not even air the Flintstones. So it was really people's interpretation of the characters in creating the toys, and that's what gives them a unique flavor that's more akin today to fan art, which is more an individual's perception of characters. And like I said, there is a tremendous integration from my collecting and my career that, for instance, my film Jingle All the Way was a film about finding the hottest Christmas toy of the year and the search for it. And in doing so, I had the opportunity with a wonderful art department and people like Tim Flattery and my storyboard artist Daryl Henley to create an entire line of toys, which now sit in my shelves in Funko Pop. Last year released a whole line of Jingle toys, including reproducing the original 14-inch talking Turbo Man that was originally manufactured by Tiger Toys in 1996 and failed to fly off the shelves as we had anticipated. And now those are collector's items. And strangely enough, on the 25th anniversary of Jingle All the Way, Turbo Man became the hottest toy in America. I don't have want lists. I don't do this for financial gain in any way. It's much more deep-rooted in expressing my affection for these characters, these shows, these institutions. I am a DC guy. By the time I was 10 years old, there was still no Marvel. There was no Spider-Man when I was a kid, so I'm deeply embedded in the DC universe, but my collecting is really limited to Superman. Always loved the George Reeves series growing up. It's one of my earliest memories, is watching what undoubtedly was a rerun of the very first episode of Superman versus the Mole Man. But there is such a wealth of products featuring the Man of Steel. It's great when The collecting continues even past what normally would be a character's expiration date. Like Hulk Hogan has been canceled, but they're still making beautiful Hulk Hogan figures, and I'm happy to get them. Hulk Hogan's an aberration. I never set out to collect Hulk Hogan, and I wanted to collect something I could just buy off the shelf and put on, put on mine. I guess I'm really from another generation. I'm someone who grew up in the 50s and into the 60s, and my choices are not exclusive to that era, but certainly it has provided the basis for what I do enjoy and collect. I collect a lot of robots because I think they're beautiful, not necessarily that I'm the biggest sci-fi fan. I have virtually no Star Wars, which today is the ultimate in collections. I was a kid who collected things, comic books, certain toys, things. I didn't so much collect them as there were things that I had to have growing up, that I demanded that I own, and I've reacquired several of those objects. But I think I really began to collect in earnest when my then girlfriend, now wife of many, many years, moved in, and she brought along with her a pair of salt and pepper shakers that had been originally in the collection of Andy Warhol. And this started us buying salt and pepper shakers. And pretty soon we had hundreds. And that led to, okay, if you're buying Mr. Peanut salt and pepper shakers, or Cool Cigarette Penguin salt and pepper shakers, you get more of those figures, and it leads you into the advertising collectibles, led into more comic collectibles. Popeye was one of our first collections, and into things like the Flintstones, and gradually widening to include lunch boxes, thermoses, movie posters. You know, I was terribly influenced by the Marx Brothers in high school as I was evolving into a student filmmaker. And today I have many, many of their posters, artifacts, books about them, figures, a beautiful set of Dolls in the Box, a spin-off from their last film, 1951's Love Happy. They're so deeply rooted in my interests, my career, and my childhood. It all expresses itself through my collecting. I don't know that I have a favorite. I have favorite items. The 29-foot Wonder Bread sign from the factory in Detroit in the 50s that's in our backyard, and the 5-foot-tall papier-mâché big boy figure that on nice days be rolled out on the restaurant's Van Nuys location that was established in 1951 and is no longer with us. That's not to say that the little tiny glow-in-the-dark light bulb that I grabbed from a gumball machine in elementary school doesn't mean as much to me as the giant, expensive items. The things that you love aren't bound by price, what it means to you personally. I'm very fortunate in that, unlike a lot of collectors I know, I'm not limited to a room, a shelf. Many of my friends, they're forced to keep their Batmobiles at their offices. Our whole house is filled to the brim with all of our different collections. And one of the reasons that I did the book was because there's no more room. My joke is that I don't have room for another olive oil in my collections. And so it was time to take stock of it and why the things that appeal to me, the things that are related to my career, my childhood, my different spheres of influence are all reflected in that, and our entire house is a tribute to those passions. I think before licensed characters began at the turn of the century, The Yellow Kid was a comic strip. And the comic strips became a dominant form of entertainment going into the movie era. From there, the base widened to include not just characters like Popeye, Toonerville Trolley, Blondie and Dagwood came around in the 20s, and in the 30s, the comic books started creating characters, Captain Marvel and Superman and Batman. And into the Silver Age and stuff. Then TV shows, and animated TV shows in particular, became focal points for merchandising for toy companies. And so the world of toys only expanded with the baby boom, with the ability to not just have toys that wound up, but toys that were electrified and walked and performed functions. Toys have constantly grown in that way. But the original, very simple metal, even lead figures and stuff, remain beautiful and unique. But you also have to appreciate the improvements that have been made over the decades. If I buy it, it's because I enjoy it. I'm not, trying to be the biggest, best collector of anything in the world, and I'm always amazed. When we moved into our house, there was a guy at the end of the block who had the most magnificent collections I have ever seen, who had a private museum in his office. I mean, it's kind of humiliating when you have thousands and thousands of pieces and you're not even the best collector on your block. The thing about writing the book is kind of a summation of collecting. And because I've accomplished everything that I wanted to do in that area, this is an illustration of that passion and of those hunts and of the accumulation and trying to show the beauty that I see in these objects and in these characters, and try and share my passion for them with an audience in the same way that I tell a story to share my passion about that story with an audience in my career. My goals have been satisfied. Just bought a Popeye toy this morning because it was beautiful and new and interesting, and I thought it would enhance my collection. But for the most part, my time as a collector is winding down because I have satisfied so many needs, so many desires to do more with it. And doing the book has allowed me to explore seeing it in different ways and sharing that appreciation to people who can't just come up to the house and walk around like you're doing today.